This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Hylar.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick.
This is Chapter 4 of Lord of Chaos, A Sense of Humor, and our symbol is the Nodding Ravens.
And the sense of humor has two references. We get both the wonderful joke about the farmer who, and also he talks about playing a joke on Samael. You know, the army's the joke, because he's not going to use the army to take him down. That's a distraction.
Yeah.
So there's two meanings, to a sense of humor. Both talking about the Aiel sense of humor, and then Rand sort of playing a practical joke on Samael, which also, he intends to say, "Look over here," and then punch him in the face.
Who's laughing now?
No, who's falling?
The tent's dim interior was hot enough to make Camelin, some 800 miles or so to the north, seem pleasantly cool, and when Rand pushed the flap open, he blinked. The sun was a hammer that made him glad of the Shufa. A copy of the dragon banner hung above the green-striped tent, alongside one of the crimson banners bearing the ancient Aes Sedai symbol. More tents stretched across a rolling plain where all but a few tufts of tough grass had long since been beaten to dust by hooves and boots. Peaked-roof tents and flat, most white by far, if often dirty white, but many in colors or stripes. Tents and colorful banners of lords. An army had gathered here, on the border of Tyr, on the edge of the plains of Moredo. Thousands upon thousands of soldiers from Tyr and Cairhien. The Aiel had made their own camps well away from the wetlanders. 5 Aiel for every Taran and Cairhienin, and more arriving by the day. It was an army to make Ilion shake in its boost, a host already mighty enough to smash anything in its path. Anila and the rest of the foreguard were already outside, veils down, with a dozen or so Aielmen. The Aiel kept a constant guard on his tent. Clothed and armed like the maidens, they were as tall as Rand, or taller, lions to the maidens' leopards. Hard-faced, sun-dark men, with cold eyes of blue or green or gray. Today, they were Shamad Khand, Thunderwalkers, led by Royden himself, who headed the society this side of the Dragon Wall. The maidens carried the honor of the Karakarn, but every warrior society demanded some share of the guard duty. One thing about some of the men's garb differed from the maidens. Half wore a crimson cloth knotted around their temples, with the ancient Aes Sedai symbol, a black and white disc above their brows. It was a new thing, first seen only a few months earlier. Wearers of the headband considered themselves Siswai Aman in the old tongue, the spears of the dragon, or the spears owned by the dragon might be closer. The headbands and their meeting made Rand uncomfortable, but there was little he could do when the men refused to even admit they were wearing them. Why no maidens had donned the things, none he had seen at least, he had no idea. They were almost as reluctant to talk about it as the men. Do you want to take a second to talk about the spears of the dragon, the Siswai Aman?
I think the Siswai Aman are related to the bleakness. I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I think that basically when Rand revealed that the Aiel essentially had tow for breaking their promise to the Aes Sedai, a lot of people, and taking up violence, essentially, right? They should have followed the way of the leaf, and they betrayed that, took up spears, and fought. And so a lot of people, a lot of the Aiel are trying to deal with that, and that's partially how Rand broke them. One of the ways people are dealing with that is tossing down their spears, running away, or going over to the Shido saying, "No, I don't believe Rand is the Dragon Reborn. He's wrong. He couldn't be right. That, we're not the traitors." And that's where the brotherless come from.
Despair and denial.
Some people become Gaishain and say, well, the only way to fulfill my tow is just be Gaishain for the rest of my life. That's the only way I know to fulfill the shame. And then some of them are saying, you know what? We are no longer people. We are possessions. We are the spears of the dragon. We live. The only way to redeem ourselves, the only way we know to redeem ourselves is through the prophecy by fighting for the dragon. We are his spears. We've been forged into that. We are no longer individuals. We have no clan. We have no sept. We are simply possessions of the dragon, and we will act accordingly. And I think it's all related.
I agree with all that. I always interpreted the Siswayaman as it's almost a kind of polar opposite, but the same in a way, a reaction as the people who throw down their spears or become Gaishain, like giving up or what I saw when you were talking, I called your first two examples denial and despair. And the last two, I think, are really revolve around a kind of surrender, like Gaishain, obviously, if you surrender in combat, or if you're touched, you become Gaishain traditionally. But this is a kind of like becoming a Siswayaman. It means like you're surrendering your life. I'm not thinking of a good way to say this, but I feel like they're giving up their own identities, their own humanity almost, to say, this is it. This is my only purpose. I'm a spear to be thrown at the Dark One. Might die in a minute, might die tomorrow, a week, a month, but I'm gonna die soon.
I kind of want to relate it to the 5 stages of grief. The like denial are the brotherless, the anger are the like, I don't know, maybe that's the Siswayaman. Depression are the ones who go Gaishain. Bargaining might be the ones who throw down their spears and run away.
It is grief, you know. They're mourning the loss of their entire culture and their identities. They have to come up with whole new identities.
I mean, their entire culture has been based around this idea that they are an honorable people. And he has basically come out and said, no, your entire people are without honor. Their existence, the basis for their existence, violates the way of life that you believe in. You're a walking contradiction.
There's a cute moment amongst the Aiel at the end of this read. I see you, Randall Thor, Roydon said gravely. There was considerably more gray than yellow in Roydon's hair, but a blacksmith could have used the heavy-shouldered man's face for a hammer or anvil, and by the scars across his cheeks and nose it seemed possible that more than one had. Icy blue eyes made his face soft by comparison. He avoided looking at Rand's sword. May you find shade this day. That had nothing to do with the molten sun or the cloudless sky. Roydon did not seem to sweat at all. It was simply a greeting among people from a land where the sun was always baking hot, and a tree, rare. Equally formal, Rand replied, I see you, Roydon. May you find shade this day. Is the High Lord Wiramon about? Roydon nodded, toward a large pavilion with red-striped sides and a crimson roof, ringed by men with tall spears slanted precisely, shoulder to shoulder, in the burnished breastplates and gold and black coats of the Terran defenders of the stone. Above it, the 3 crescents of Tyr, white on red and gold, and the many-rayed rising sun of Kyrien, gold on blue, flanked Rand's own scarlet flag, all 3 twitching in a breeze that might have come from an oven. The Wetlanders are all here. Looking Rand straight in the eyes, Roydon added, Bruon has not been asked to that tent in 3 days, Randall Thor. Bruon was clan chief of the Nakai Aiel, Roydon's clan. They were both Saltflat sept. Nor has Han of the Tomanel or Derek of the Rain, or any clan chief. I will speak with them, Rand said. Will you tell Bruon and the others I am here? Roydon nodded gravely. Eyeing the men sideways, Anila leaned close to Jelani, then spoke in a whisper that could have been heard clearly at 10 paces. Do you know why they are called Thunderwalkers? Because even when they are standing still, you keep looking at the sky expecting to see lightning. The maidens hooted with laughter. A young Thunderwalker leapt in the air, kicking a soft knee-high boot higher than Rand's head. He was handsome, except for the puckered white scar that ran up under the strip of black cloth covering a missing eye. He wore the headband, too. Do you know why maidens use hand talk? He shouted at the top of his leap, and landing, he put on a befuddled grimace, not directed at the maidens, though. He spoke to his companions, ignoring the women. Because even when they are not talking, they cannot stop talking. The Shamad Khan laughed as hard as the maidens had. Only Thunderwalkers would see honor in guarding an empty tent, Anila told Jelani sadly, shaking her head. The next time they call for wine, if the Gaishain bring them empty cups, they will no doubt get drunker than we can on Usquai. Apparently the Thunderwalkers thought Anila had gained the best of the exchange. The one-eyed man and several others raised their bull-hide bucklers toward her, and rattled spears against them. For her part, she simply listened a moment, then nodded to herself, and fell in with the others as they followed Rand. Rand doesn't get it. This is a kind of, this event echoes through this chapter, which is flirting, is my interpretation, to be clear.
Totally, yeah.
It's a
Flirting
combative
using jokes. Yeah.
Yeah, a Thunderwalker, this guy, was it Lyran? It doesn't matter. I don't think we ever see him again, but this Thunderwalker sees one of the maidens and he talks shit. This is like what kids do when they're playing basketball or video games, right? You're just like kind of talk shit, and it's friendly, but it's part of the sparring match. It's fun, which is why I see this like the Thunderwalker gives one, the maiden gives one back, and then the Thunderwalker goes again, and the maiden and the Thunderwalkers applaud when one of the maidens wins the verbal sparring match. It's a game. They're playing with each other, yeah.
And Anyla, turns out she lays a bridal wreath at his feet before the last battle.
Yeah. And in a couple of pages, she's like, "Ooh, what's that guy's name?" In the background.
No, so she totally proposes to him. Now, unfortunately, Anyla is killed by 4 Trollocs in the last battle. She's speared through the gut. So I don't think they actually have a chance to get married, but they get to flirt in the meantime. Yay. So I was like, oh, this flirting, I'll look up what happens. And I'm like, I saw she lays a bridal wreath. Yay, they get married. And she gets killed brutally in the last battle.
Oh,
right? I'm just like,
well,
oh.
Not very many people make it, but
yeah. She's one of the losses. You know, I've always really enjoyed the. Do you know why maidens use hand talk? Because even when they're not talking, they cannot stop talking.
Yeah, even when they're not talking, they're talking.
Both sexes are constantly accusing the others of being gossips. Be like, ugh, no one gossips like a group of men.
Everyone's a gossip.
Everyone gossips, yeah. Everyone talks over each other. But that's totally a great burn. That like, yep, even when they're not talking, they're still talking. I've always enjoyed that one. I thought that was the best insult of them all.
I like that one too.
Okay, back to Saswayamon. Why aren't any of the maidens Saswayamon?
I don't think what the Saswayamon are doing is not traditional or normal in Aiel society, and I'd question whether an Aiel woman would pledge themselves to him to that degree. And, I mean, that's not to say the maidens haven't pledged their lives to Rand, but that's different than literally being his spear. You see the difference? Does that make sense?
Sure. And you might say, as everyone's saying, they already carry his honor, so there's no need to also become his possession. I guess what the women would probably tell you is we're not that stupid. Like, yeah. We're people. Like, of course we're people. We're not idiots in thinking we're possessions. Like, we're not going to submit our humanity into becoming possessions. We're not idiots like that. Let the men do that. The women are people. Whereas
I feel like the Saswayamon are elevating Rand to something more like a king or an emperor, and I don't think the maidens would do that.
See, I think there's a difference between elevating Rand and devaluing themselves. And what I think they've done is devalued themselves and taken away their own humanity and made themselves the possessions of Rand. And like, well, he's still the Karakarn or whatever. They are his possessions now because they've taken away their own humanity. And that might elevate him up a little bit, but that to me is especially what the maidens would never do, which is just like devalue themselves and strip their own humanity. They're
debase themselves. Yeah, it's
very debasing. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of the solutions, these people have shame, and I think this is their way of dealing with it. And I mean, we see the level that Aviendha goes through to basically make up for the shame that she has.
Yeah.
And that's nothing compared to what the whole Aiel people feel.
Want me to read the joke sequence?
Yeah, I think that's the next thing I have. There's a bunch of a bunch of Terran and Kyrianan interactions here that I found in no way interesting, other than he called one guy a big-nosed fellow, which is, Jordan's way of saying ugly.
Oh yeah, is that Taurian? Potato-nosed Taurian.
Potato-nosed Taurian.
Yeah, that's what he often says.
This is just some random soldier. Oh, this is the guy who's selling the ravens back. So basically he's making money by hunting down some ravens who may or may not be spies.
I wanted to point that out too, it's an interesting side note that Rand has put a bounty on the head of every rat and raven or crow. And so he sees like boys and old men running around the camp, clubbing them.
Not that, and they really believe, they're like, well, whatever. I don't think they're spies, but I'll, club a rat for a silver coin.
Yeah. Rand notes that not a lot of people even believe him. And when he brings up Samael later, the same thing. The High Lords are like, sure, the Forsaken, whatever, let's just attack Ilion.
So basically, this entire time, the Aiel have been following Rand, like, exchanging jokes, insulting each other. And they turn to him and they're like, hey, why don't you ever laugh at our jokes? And,
yeah.
It's because there's vast cultural differences. And so I think Rand turns around and tells, like, the one joke that always gets laughs in his hometown that's entirely culturally based, but he tells it in the most deadpan, dry way.
Yeah. It's fun because, and if you're a big fan of the series and you spent a lot of time rereading this, you can kind of start to understand the giant cultural divide between Rand and the Aiel. And because, this joke that Rand is about to tell revolves entirely around what is perceived as an appropriate greeting to a neighbor in the land that he grew up. That's what this whole joke is about.
And entirely based around a societal norm in a culture that these Aiel have nothing about. And he knows that, and I think that's why he picked this specific joke. Which
is like, you can go 100 miles in the modern world and people greet each other in a little bit different way, Mm-hmm. Particularly neighbors, but anyway.
And though I do want to say one more thing, that it is sort of based around Southern hospitality as well. Like, we go back to the fact that Jordan is from the South, like, and is, good old Southern boy. And this, to me, is a very sort of good old Southern boy type joke. It's all about, like, being polite to the right person at the right time, where politeness in the South is weaponized to the point where you use it at the right time, and not being polite to somebody is a huge insult. Not an accident.
Yeah. And to us, I feel like that seems really intuitive and natural, but to the Aiel, I can understand why it wouldn't. They just have a different methods. Like you said, Rand is walking with his guard. He has a fine sense of humor. Who is he? That was Anyla. His name is Lyran, Samara replied. A Kosaida Chireen. You think he has humor because he thought your joke better than his. He does look to have strong hands, several of the maidens chortled. Did you not think Anyla funny, Rand al'Thor? Sulin was striding at his side. You did not laugh. You never laugh. Sometimes I do not think you have a sense of humor. Stopping dead, Rand rounded on them so suddenly that several reached for their veils and looked about for what had startled him. He cleared his throat. An irascible old farmer named Hu discovered one morning that his best rooster had flown into a tall tree beside his farm pond and wouldn't come down, so he went to his neighbor Will and asked for help. The men had never gotten along, but Will finally agreed, so the two men went to the pond and began climbing the tree. Hu first. They meant to frighten the rooster out, you see, but the bird only kept flying higher, branch by branch. Then, just as Hu and the rooster reached almost the very top of the tree, with Will right behind, there was a loud crack. The branch under Hu's feet broke away, and down he went into the pond, splashing water and mud everywhere. Will scrambled down as fast as he could and reached out to Hu from the bank, but Hu just lay there on his back, sinking deeper into the mud, until only his nose stuck out of the water. Another farmer had seen what happened, and he came running and pulled Hu out of the pond. Why didn't you take Will's hand? He asked Hu. You could have drowned. Why should I take his hand now? Hu grumped. I passed him just a moment ago in broad daylight, and he never spoke a word to me. He waited expectantly. The maidens exchanged blank looks. Finally Samara said, What happened with the pond? Surely the water is the point of this story. Throwing up his hands, Rand started for the red-striped pavilion again. Behind him he heard Leah say, I think it was supposed to be a joke. How can we laugh when we don't know what happened to the water? Myra said. It was the rooster, Anyla put in. Wetlander humor is strange. I think it was something about the rooster. He tried to stop listening. How can we laugh when we don't know what happened to the water?
Cultural differences.
It's like, God damn it. Just turns back around and walks away.
And do you want to explain the joke just in case anyone doesn't get it?
Sure. Do you want to?
Go ahead. I want to see what you...
So the two men, the two farmers, Farmer 1 His rooster climbs up a tree. He goes to Farmer 2. He's like, please help me get my rooster out of the tree. They climb one after the other. So one's above the other as they're climbing. Branch breaks. Farmer falls all the way down. The other farmer jumps down to help him. But that farmer passed him without greeting him, which is very rude.
Because he was falling.
He didn't say hello or acknowledge him. Yeah. You shouldn't walk by without saying something. That's the joke.
And the idea is, well, he snubbed me. Why should I?
Yeah, what a jerk.
What a jerk. Yeah.
I'm not going to help him.
No, well, I'm not going to accept his help.
Oh, right. Oh.
Because it's the guy in the pond who's just being... It's like he's so offended by not being greeted, he's willing to die.
To drive.
For his honor. Right. And I really do think that, like, Rand is trying to basically say, like, this is the obsession and craziness people in my land will go to for their honor, even though you're telling jokes about the craziness that you guys will go to for your honor. You know, like getting stabbed or by accidentally stabbing your whatever wife or in-law. There's so many weird relationships where he's like, I don't get why that's funny, but I know it's all about standing up for your honor. And yeah, he just tells the same joke in equivalent Two Rivers terms.
It is a good joke. It made me wonder if it existed before, like if RJ made it up or not.
I think it is. Like, I've seen some like typical like Southern jokes about not necessarily falling off a tree, but stuff like that, where it's like just Googling it. Let's see if I have it here in front of me. I found a couple of like
similar jokes.
Yeah. My guess is that Rand just doesn't have like terrible delivery, that even if it was like a decent joke, like he delivered it like so badly that even the Two Rivers folks would have just like rolled their eyes and been like, yeah, nice try.
Rand walks into the tent, takes off his shutha, and all the Kyrianan and Terran lords are there, cringing and prattling on.
I like how he whispers, "The stone still stands" to the fighters, because he remembers that's what they were saying on the night, sort of winning them over a little bit.
I always liked that Rand gets along better with soldiers than he does with any of these monarchs.
He's got more in common with them.
Yeah. The assembled lords and ladies, or whoever's here, are basically informing Rand that several of their number have disappeared, gone off to Haddon Merk, and are raising a rebellion against him, was like the notable part.
And that rebellion becomes super important because isn't Haddon Merk where he encounters Fane and gets the second cut with the dagger across the second wound over the first wound?
Yes.
So this is sort of the instigation of that plot line. And there's a few other things that come out of this. And a bunch of these people end up returning to Tyr under High Lord Darlin. So remember, Rand goes out there and kind of wins him over with his Taviran-ness before he gets stabbed. Him and Min are like in full Taviran force, and they kind of win him over and get him to come back. And so there's this whole thing, and that's how Darlin ends up becoming King of Tyr, the first King of Tyr in a long time, instead of High Lord.
All right.
But this is the whole start of that plot line that goes for quite a bit through the story. It's one of those plot lines that's like one of the problems Rand just has to deal with over and over and over and over again, rather than like, the end of the world. The Forsaken, the last battle. These people being a pain in his butt.
And I totally understand. Rand's first instinct is to basically say like, let him rot out in the swamp. He's like, I have other things to do. He's like, sure, let them hide.
Yeah. It comes back to bite him, right? It's one of those things where I think one of Rand's flaws as a leader is that he puts off things that he doesn't want to do or take care of right away, and because he puts them off, they come back and bite him in the ass.
Yeah, it does happen.
All these lords he sent away from Cairhien that he didn't fucking want to deal with because they were rebellious, well, now here they are, and they've had a chance to embed themselves in a new place, and they're a big pain in the ass. So, congratulations, you put your problems off for tomorrow, and it's tomorrow.
Yeah, we all do it.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I'm any better, but it's a little harder when you're juggling nations.
I also wanted to point out that Tolmarin says they wrote more than defiance. They wrote that you're a false dragon, that the fall of the stone in your drawing of a sword that is not a sword were some Aes Sedai trick, which is exactly what Neal said like a couple of chapters ago. And that just struck me as strange. I've got nothing else with that. But It just struck me as strange that even the verbiage is the same.
I mean, we did hear him say, Balwar was going to start those 4 rumors and get them out there. And so I think what we're seeing is the effect of just how effective Balwar's rumors are at spreading. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, Balwar, something like that.
The dry little secretary who dry washes his hands when he feels he's being insulted and ends up helping out Perrin for the rest of the series.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because that makes it work perfectly, because basically Rand notes at some point, I'm not going to bother finding the exact line, that he knew particularly, Darlin, Tadosian, Astanda, he knew this group of individuals were going to undercut him if he gave them any opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
He tried to distract them. It didn't work, but all it took was Balwar's little rumor for them to give them enough fire to actually do something.
And I missed that. I missed that was the same verbiage. What's the quote that you said was the same verbiage? Because I totally missed that one.
They wrote that you are a false dragon, that the fall of the stone and your drawing of the sword that is not a sword were some Aes Sedai trick. There's a hint of question in his tone.
Yeah, that is entirely what Patron Nile was implicating in his rumors.
And this is actually kind of interesting. We'll read just a little bit more. Rand replies, "And what do you believe, Tolmaran?" And Tolmaran says, "I think you drew Kalendor. I think you are the dragon reborn."
Mm-hmm.
With emphasis on the think, the narration says. Which is kind of saying, like, even the people in this room are sort of implying, maybe I should say, even the people in this room I wouldn't trust their loyalty.
To be honest, one thing we haven't said is Dark Friend Alert. Waramon is there.
Oh, yes.
And I'm wondering how many of his subordinates are also Dark Friends who rebel with him. So, and are also, like, trying, And so what I think is Tolormon and Estevan, who both sort of challenge Rand, they're both not Dark Friends. I think everyone else in here, like, a lot of these other, like, folks who work for Waramon might be also Dark Friendish.
Oh, for sure. They've usually...
Too many characters. There's a lot of characters in this chapter who are just one-time folks. So I do not know them off the top of my head.
Rand talks to like 3 or 4 separate groups of people in this chapter, and he's just walking through crowds the whole time. So there's just name salad. And I also wanted to note, if only because it's kind of funny, that Potato Nose Torian is getting wasted in the corner. He's so drunk right now that when he drinks his wine, it's sloshing over his face because his good buddies are the rebels and Haddon Merc. Those are his close, tight buddies.
Nice.
And now he's standing there sweating.
Like, what did you know about this?
Wine drunk.
Yeah.
He thinks he might get beheaded at any second,
It would be like if I went out and like assassinated the president and the Secret Service was like, Patrick, what did you know? Like, your buddy just went off and rebelled against the U.S. and you talked to him every week and you didn't know this was coming? You think there'd be signs like him saying something about it in the podcast, like in a joking manner ahead of time.
Right? You got a jug of wine before my execution? I think that's where Torian's at right now. Like, might as well be drunk for this because it's going to be bad. But...
Right, it's going to be real bad.
Yeah.
He thinks repeatedly he wants all the attention to look like he's forming this huge army to smash Ilion. That he's just going to like march an army into the country and take it over. And he's like doing all the plans for this big invasion and letting it be seen that he's going to do this big invasion. But he has no plans on following through with the big invasion. He plans, I think, on doing a strike while Samael's distracted and trying to take him out one-on-one.
Right. It's a classic misdirection. He's raising 2x4 up above his head and menacing Samael and then jabbing him in the gut with the offhand. That's what he actually does. Rand shows some of his classic simple man wisdom in saying things like, he begins by saying, does anyone speak in their defense? Does anyone know any mitigation? Like, is there any way around this? Is there any reason I don't know about that I should before I make a decision about this? And everybody's, no, nothing.
It's a very, is there any reason why these two should not wed? Or speak now or forever hold your peace? Yeah. Except, is there any reason why I shouldn't murder these two? Speak now or forever hold your peace?
And then Rand simply says, their titles are forfeited. Their lands and estates are confiscated. Arrest warrants are to be signed for every man whose name is known, and every woman. Publish it, that whoever kills one of them will be absolved of murder, and whoever aids them will be charged with treason. Any who surrender will be spared their lives. But those who persist will hang.
And what he's trying to do there is hope that the women turn themselves in so that he doesn't have to kill them. And I think it does work out because that's how he gets Darlin to turn himself in and essentially become king. So he doesn't have to kill all those in who rebel, which is good because they actually are a decent set of nobles who may have had some honest problems with the way Rand was running things.
I also kind of want to note the very next thing Rand says is, now that that's settled.
Yeah, just we're done with that.
No one says anything, no reply. Yeah.
Nope. Now that I've made my proclamation, I've been in those meetings with bosses where they're like, and now that that's settled, and you're like, dude, okay, well, you decided it was settled. No one else here agrees with you, but since you have the power and you get to make the decision, I guess it's settled. Yeah. Fine. Yeah, it leaves a bit of a bitter taste in your mouth. Not as much as fork root tea the tea that Nynaeve makes for headaches.
Oh,
if you're lying. Yeah.
The bad tasting tea.
Sheep's tongue. That's what is it. Sheep's tongue.
I feel like I should probably also just note for the record that these kinds of pronouncements scare the shit out of the High Lords. And we see a bit of this in Rand's head here. Despite all the laws Rand had changed in both lands, despite lords hauled before magistrates and hanged for murder or fined for assault, they still thought that there was some difference bred in the bones, some natural order that made them lions by right and commoners sheep. A High Lord who went to the gibbet died a High Lord, but Darlin and the others would die peasants in these men's eyes. And that was a much worse fate than dying itself.
Not according to Min's prophecy. She takes one look at Darlin and goes, oop, he's going to be a king. Oh, and Satanis is clarifying, powdered maven's leaf is also often including sheep's tongue in the teas that make it taste just really, really terrible.
Rand talks to the High Lords.
I thought it was interesting here. Weirman gets angry that he thinks it's because Rand refers to Samael. I think it's because Weirman's job is to distract him from Samael, and it doesn't work. I don't know, because Weirman wants to basically plunge Rand's forces into chaos.
Right.
And I think he's hoping that if Rand goes off to deal with Had and Mark, he can mess things up while he's gone.
Are you talking about Weirman's mouth tightened deal?
Yeah.
This area? Yeah. I was a little not 100% sure here what's happening.
The only clue I really have to what's going on in their head is the fact that Weirman is a dark friend, and I have to assume that, and he is kind of working for Samael, because we know Samael's planted a bunch of folks in Rand's camp, probably a bunch of spies, which I think it's interesting here that Rand refers to spies when I think half the people, Weirman certainly is a spy. I just think that his goal as a dark friend there is to distract Rand, to try and break down morale in his forces and try and lead them into disaster whenever possible, which is why he's insisting that he can complete this 250-mile march and just take Samael down in one go. And Rand's like, you idiot, he'll see you coming and he'll be ready for you months ahead of time.
Yeah, there's a bit of that interplay in this conversation too between Rand and Weiraman in particular, but the other High Lords are chiming in, where Weiraman seems to really insist that he should just be able to mount up all his cavalry and charge the 250 miles straight into a glorious battle where he'll knock down these hill forts with horses somehow. And it just doesn't make any sense, which is why I think you're onto something with Weiraman's not twisting his mouth because Rand said Samael. Weiraman's twisting his mouth because Weiraman wants to lead the forces badly and Rand's not letting him.
Right.
That's all I can think of anyway. Rand won't let him go anywhere, and Rand won't even put him in charge. Rand is like, yeah, you're in charge until Matt gets here, which I think is another thing that's pissing the High Lords off. You're going to send one of your farm boy friends down here to lead my army? Are you serious?
And I also want to bring up that they mentioned Martin Stepaneos here, who is the king of Ilion. And he disappears for a while. It turns out that Elida kidnaps him, and he kind of pops back up pretty badly shaken.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, there's a reason he's gone. Elida steals him, and he's like in the White Tower as a prisoner the entire time. Like Egwene is doing her rebel Amerlin seat thing. I'm sure Martin Stepaneos was given all the honor he deserved in the phrase Elida used with Rand as an honored guest, in the same way that Rand is going to be an honored guest.
Yeah,
in the box, all the honor he deserves. Yeah. Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm skimming through here, and I kind of want to point out that Rand often makes good, wise decisions.
He's had the best tutors in Moraine, and Tom.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's very true. And Tam, his own whole thing. But here, we see in Rand's head, he's thinking about the moving this army, and as he's talking to Weiramon about it and telling Weiramon he's not allowed to move the army, Rand notes that the Terrans are really eager to go attack Ilion. Of course they are. The Cairhienin not as much. They'll follow where they're led, but they're not so into it. And I just kind of noted, I thought this was Rand being really clever. He understands that a huge army would need a constant stream of wagons out of Tyr, bringing everything from flour for bread to nails for horseshoes. Except for Talmaron, the High Lords were of the opinion that the army could carry what it needed to cross the plain, and then could live off of Ilion. There seemed to be a certain relish in the thought of stripping their ancient enemies' lands to the ground like a swarm of locusts. The Cairhienin had a different opinion, especially Samaradrid and Menaril. Not only commoners had gone hungry through Cairhien's civil war. More tension between the two groups. The Cairhienin don't like the idea that the Terrans are... Their plan is to go attack Ilion and starve them. Feed their armies on Ilion's food.
There is a thought of warfare of like just basically totally destroying the enemy by, well, just take all of the resources for yourself. Why not? Right? And feed your army
salt
that
the
way.
earth when you leave.
Right. You know, and that's not what Rand is trying to do. He's trying to rescue the country, not raise it to the ground and make it untenable.
Right. Not kill them all and not create a famine. None of those. Just remove Samael and add Ilion to his empire.
And then Ilion's going to be part of his empire. So the last thing he wants to do is have to, like, rehab another country, for fuck's sake. Like, come on. He's already having enough problems with Cairhien, which is a disaster after the Shido took it over. They're a mess. And Tyr has all the issues that come along with just a terrible classist society that he's trying to fix. So he's got, like, 2 messes on his hand, plus Caemlyn, which is, you know, frankly in a little bit of a rebellion because they don't want to be ruled by him. They're like, no. We have a queen. Go away. And so he's got a whole bunch of people rebelling on him there. Also a whole bunch of dark friends installed by Ravine. You know, so like every country he's taken over has been a freaking mess. And the last thing he wants to do is make Ilion worse.
Yeah, that's not his goal. Although, of course, the army is not ever supposed to go to Ilion.
True, yes.
So this is all hypothetical based on a situation that Rand wants people to believe is going to happen.
I love the fact, did you catch the fact that he was scouting Ilion in the flesh in Tel Riyadh?
In Tel Riyadh, yeah.
Yeah, he says he had visited them in a manner of speaking. There was a place that he knew how to enter. A strange, unpeopled reflection of the real world. So that's definitely just him entering Tel Riyadh. And we saw him do that in the battle with Ravine at the end of the last book.
Yeah. Is he gatewaying in each time?
He's opening a gateway. Yep. It's the only way he knows how to do. He's not dreaming. He's entering in the flesh.
Yeah, I don't think we ever see Rand do real dreamer things. There's like hints at the edges, but...
Not since he learned to ward his dreams, right? Like, before then...
Oh, yeah.
He was, like, in Tel Riyadh quite a bit with, like, the dream shards and all that kind of stuff. But once the first thing he wanted Asmodean to teach him to do was to ward his dreams from the wise ones. And so, having done that, there's no way for him... It's sealed from the inside as well as from the outside, so he can't get out into the world of dreams. So the only way for him to dream, basically, anymore in Tel Riyadh is to enter in the flesh.
Do you think he could dream his way in if he wanted to and had the training?
Yes, I do think Rand is a dreamer. But he would have to take down his wards, yeah.
I always thought so too, but I don't think there's true confirmation. I don't know. I always thought so, though.
my theory, or my headcanon, is now that Ishii never really escaped the boar in the flesh. He only escaped it and walked the world, every 1,000 years he walked the world for 40. I don't think he walked the world. I think he just was able to get into Teleron-Riyadh and people's dreams and influence them. When they talk about, like, whispering the ear of Arthur Hawkwing, yeah, I bet he was doing it in his dreams.
Didn't necessarily have to be there.
Although I guess wasn't he like an actual I guess there was an advisor who was like Worm Tongue to so he did have a physical presence. Damn it. I have to go back and check on that. But I do think we never actually see Ishii in the flesh. We always see him in the world of dreams. I mean, I think he's walking the world of dreams in the flesh, but I don't think we ever see him in the real world in the first 3 books. I think that every time we see him, it's actually in a dream shard, in Rand's dreams, or in one of the battles, right? Because
the sky battles.
There's the sky battle in book 2. Book 3, he steps through a gateway into darkness in the Stone of Tyr and is in Teleron-Riyadh. And book 1 there's all sorts of weirdness going on with the Eye of the World.
Yeah.
And he totally, like, disappears and goes somewhere else and teleports to the actual battle location.
Rand makes the stairs and walks into the dream. What is it? He makes stairs, right?
I want to say that's book 2, and that's when he appears in the sky in...
Oh, yeah, the Tarwin's Gap situation.
Tarwin's Gap, I think, is book 1.
Oh, yeah, I think at the end, yeah.
Weirman's plan we talked about. Hold here until Matt. And again, Matt's just supposed to be a distraction, just so Samael thinks that the focus is on this battle. Because I think Rand, when he's talking to Perrin at one point, says, "Will you take over? Because I need one of you there. Either you or Matt." And Perrin's like, "Hell no, I won't take over." And he's like, "Fine, Matt'll do."
Sits down. He's smoking his pipe. They're chatting. The conversation lasted fully as long as his discussion with the lords, not because there was much to talk about, but because Rand had talked alone with the Wetlanders. Aiel were touchy about honor. Their lives were governed by Ji'ito, honor, and obligation, with rules as complex and odd as their humor. They talked of the Aiel still on their way down from Cairhien, of when Mat would arrive, and of what, if anything, should be done about the Shaido. They talked about hunting, and women, and whether brandy was as good as Usquai, and about humor. Even patient Bruon finally spread his hands in surrender, and gave up trying to explain Aiel jokes. I thought this was just kind of a nice scene.
It is. It's nice to see him. And again, I think I've talked about how Rand is stripped of a lot of his friends in this book, and it's nice to see him bonding with the Aiel clan chiefs, and in a way his people, his father's people at least.
I also found it interesting from the cultural element that Rand decides to go spend this time with the clan chiefs, even though they don't need him and he doesn't need them for anything in particular at the moment. He feels that he should give them as much time as the High Lords so that he's showing them their due honor. He's spending time with them to demonstrate his respect for them.
And he does respect them.
Like, you go and visit your grandma, like, not because you need her to do something or because she needs you to do something, but you go and you visit because you pay homage. It's, there's not a reason.
Sure. The way I think of it is classroom management, that when you have the bad kids who pull your attention for a while and you have to, like, spend a bunch of class, like, actually calming them down and getting them to, like, pay attention and stop working, you then need to turn around and pay attention to the rest of the class, or they will feel completely abandoned, even because they've been sitting there being good the whole time and not fucking up, and you've had to deal with all the fuck ups this whole time. And if you just go back to doing whatever you were doing before, they're going to be like, what the fuck? Why was I good? Like, there was no point in me, like, helping you out if you're just going to treat me like shit and give all your attention to the people who are acting like assholes.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of, like, management of child management, or I don't know.
Kind of, but yeah,
that's what politics is, right?
And respect, and
it's dealing with people's lizard brain,
and also a bit of acknowledgement, like in your example. There should be rewards, not just not punishment. That can't be a reward,
Real-time follow-up. We were talking about whether Rand was a dreamer or not. In The Dragon Reborn, chapter 36, Perrin is in the wolf dream, and he encounters Rand, who has dreamt himself into Tel'aran'rhiod. And that's when Rand throws the fireball at him, and he gets the burn on his chest.
Oh, yeah.
So that's before Rand... That's Rand dreaming himself into the dream, before he's learned to ward his dreams, and before he's learned to enter in the flesh. The only counter-argument is possibly that Baal-Zaman may have pulled him into the dream, because Baal-Zaman was torturing him. So it's possible that Baal-Zaman...
Pulled them both at the same time?
Yeah, it's just pulled Rand into Tel'aran'rhiod, so he could mess with him. Yeah. Perrin's just traveling around the wolf dream, being trained by Hopper.
I'm going with Rand as a dreamer. I'm sticking with it.
I've always thought so, and I know we'd like come to that conclusion before, but I was trying to remember when I wanted to reference that chapter in particular as a moment when Rand is dreaming naturally.
Nodding.
I love the fact that he's smoking the Two Rivers tobacco with them. It's like just a taste of home for Rand.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think to note that, but he managed to find a case of tobacco from his own village while he was in Camelin.
And so he's like sharing that, and that's also a sign of respect, I think, because he's like, this is my special leaf, right? I wouldn't share this with anybody because there's a limited supply of this. That's
true, and also Two Rivers tobacco is like
the shit.
I mean, as someone an ex-American smoker, I hated smoking anything that wasn't Virginia tobacco. It doesn't taste the same, and people talk about it in Wheel of Time, just that, oh wow, you got the Two Rivers stuff, like that's the good stuff, you know.
I kind of think of it as Rand being from like the Champagne Valley, and people are like, the Champagne Valley, that's where like champagne comes from, right? And he's like, yeah. It's the only thing. Yes. It's the only thing anyone knows about the Champagne Valley is that's where champagne comes from, and it's like the only thing anyone knows about Two Rivers is that's where Two Rivers tobacco comes from, and I think they do wool, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's like tobacco and wool, right? Yeah.
Not much out there, but cheap and tobacco. But yeah, I see Two Rivers tobacco as like Isle of Skye Scotch. Like, you know, any whiskey will do, but if you want like fancy specialty, nice things, you know.
One of the things they talk about here is the difference between Usquai and brandy, which I think they're like comparing and deciding which one's better. And it's like, what do you do when you're hanging out with your buddies smoking a pipe? You talk about booze and women, right? Like, that's what Rand's doing here.
Yeah. You make fun of your like one vodka drinking friend or whatever, you know, like
right.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, like Anila, who's his bodyguard, was flirting with this other guy, and they're like teasing him about that and the whole like exchange earlier. No, it's a great cultural moment, and one of those things that, again, the TV show, I hope they include moments like that as world building things. And like, it doesn't even have to be anything. It could be from someone else's POV, walking past an open doorway, seeing Rand sitting around with the clan chief smoking and drinking. And it could just be like, you know, a 3-second scene, but I hope it's in there.
Yeah, just casual talk in the tent over a cup of Usquai. I feel ya. I feel like this would be actually really easy to do in film because there's so much happening in the background, which is kind of what we were talking about at the beginning of this chapter. There's so much name salad.
Right.
Because Rand is just casually observing a crowd of people, so we get these little bits here and there. But that would be easy to do in film. Rand's in the foreground, smoking pipes and drinking with the clan chiefs, and in the background there's like the maidens and the Thunderwalkers, the two little groups of maidens and Thunderwalkers that are playing with each other.
And you can have a lot of that literally in the exchange while Rand's having these conversations, and you can be like...
That would be fun.
I'll just look for the detail and stuff.
Whenever anyone gets a good jab in, there's like a big ruckus comes up in the background, you know? People are tapping their spears on their
Yeah,
shields.
Totally. Yeah, I like that you called it applause,
burn.
But it was like...
That's basically what they're saying.
Kelso being like, burn.
Sick burn. Oh, that makes me want to watch that 70s show. There's a good feel show that never makes me feel bad, you know?
Yeah, I can always watch. That is entirely a background noise show that I can put on. I can dip in and out. I always giggle a little bit, and nothing about it makes me feel bad. And don't DM me about the actors' personal lives afterwards, because I don't want to know.
Oh, no.
I'm aware, but I don't want to know the details.
These days, I just feel like whenever I say, oh, I read an article by such and such public figure, like, they seem really thoughtful. And then, like, 4 of my friends are like, dude, you should Google a little deeper. It's like, everyone. It's everyone.
Stop breaking the law, assholes.
Everyone's ruined. Relationship advice for Rand. Here we go.
From the women. And I like that there's, again, the two sides of the power. You've got the men giving him all the relationship advice, and then the women come in and tell him, like, the other side of things.
Yeah. I love the maiden's advice. It's so weird. Okay. Nyla eyed him. If you did not avoid Aviendha so, she would see that you ate. He attracts her interest, then runs from her. Samara muttered. You must attract her again. Why do you not offer to wash her hair? He should not be that forward, Nyla said firmly. Asking to brush her hair will be more than enough. He does not want her to think him forward. Samara sniffed. She will not think he is forward when he runs from her. You can be too modest, Randolph Thor. You do realize that neither of you is my mother, don't you? The Cadensor-clad women looked at each other in confusion. Do you think this is another Wetlander joke? Nyla asked. Samara shrugged. I do not know. He does not look amused. She patted Rand on the back. I am sure it was a good joke, but you must explain it to us. Rand suffered in silence, grinding his teeth while they watched him eat. They literally watched every spoonful. Matters became no better when they left his plate and Sulin joined him. Sulin had some blunt and most improper advice on how he could attract Aviendha's notice. Among the Aiel, it was the sort of thing a first sister might do for a first brother. You must be decently modest in her eyes, the white-haired maiden told him, but not so modest she thinks you boring. Ask her to scrape your back in the sweat tent, but shyly, with your eyes downcast. When you undress for bed, let yourself dance as if life pleases you, then apologize when you suddenly realize she is there, and put yourself straight into your blankets. Can you blush? A great deal of suffering in silence. The maidens knew too much, and not enough. When they returned to Camelin, well after the sun had gone down, Rand crept into his apartment with his boots in his hands, fumbling his way through the anteroom into his bedchamber in the dark. Even if he had not known Aviendha would be there, already on her pallet on the floor by the wall, he would have felt her presence. In the stillness of the night, he could hear her breathing. For once, it seemed he had managed to wait long enough for her to fall asleep. He had tried to stop this, but Aviendha paid him no mind, and the maidens laughed at his shyness and modesty. Good things in a man when alone, they agreed, so long as not carried too far. He climbed into his bed with a sense of relief that Aviendha was already asleep, and some disgruntlement that he dared not light a lamp to wash, and she turned over on her pallet. Very likely she had been awake all along. Sleep well and wake, was all she said. Thinking what idiocy it was to feel this sudden contentment, because a woman he wanted to avoid told him good night, he stuffed a goose-down pillow beneath his head. Aviendha probably thought this was the most marvelous joke. Taunting was almost an art among the Aiel, and the nearer it came to bringing blood, the better. Sleep began to come, and his last conscious thought was that he had a huge joke of his own, though only he and Mad and Bashir knew it yet. Samael had no sense of humor at all, but that great hammer of an army waiting in Tyr was the biggest joke the world had ever seen. With any luck, Samael would be dead before he knew he should laugh.
I like that little bit about how he has no humor. He just slips that in there, a little LTT knowledge.
Wait,
Samael had no sense of humor at all. How does Rand know that?
Oh, I didn't even catch that.
Also, I like the fact that all those things the maidens were telling Rand to do are almost exactly what Aviendha's been doing this whole time. Just basically heavily flirting with Rand. Some of it's been by accident, but some of it's definitely been on purpose.
Do you mean you feel Rand is like doing what the maidens are telling Rand to do?
No, that Aviendha's doing like all those things that they're like, can you blush? Can you like dance like no one's looking, and then realize that and then like have him catch you in your bedroom and stuff. Aviendha's been doing all that stuff. She's been like undressing and having him catch her, and like bathing with him around and arranging her to see him and all that kind of stuff. I just think the things that they're pointing out Rand should do to attract Avienda's attention are things that she's been doing to attract his attention. It's just the symmetry part,
I guess Aiel women like modesty.
Generally, because the women are the ones who do the pursuing. They like a modest man, who can show his interest but doesn't proclaim it, so that the woman can decide whether or not to follow through.
Kind of like this system.
Right?
I feel like it would take a lot of pressure off,
Of us, yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Maybe
so.
not so much of the women. Yeah, so I was just using my phone and, the battery died like it usually does, and I went to charge it and it just didn't charge. And I cannot for the life of me get it to charge back up. So I went ahead and I was due for an update on my plan, so I got the new iPhone SE, ordered that sucker, and that came it came really fast. It arrived within 48 hours of ordering it.
Wow, that is fast.
Yeah, it was stupid fast. And then I also got the case, which I custom printed up with the Fox and Raven Media logo.
Is that the one with the new processor?
Yeah, it's got the same processor as the 11, but it's in the body of the 8.
I'm just Googling pictures.
I really like it.
Sweet. I'm not seeing big prices on these things either.
No, yeah, it was super cheap. It was
$400?
I'm spending, yeah, but I put it on my plan, so it's it ends up being $12 a month.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
Yeah, I did that last time too. They really want you to do that now, which I have had a small fit over the last 2 times I bought a phone. I don't understand. I have cash right now. You don't want the cash that's in my hand. Are you sure?
No.
You want me to pay you later?
But I also took the opportunity to get a logo printed, the Fox and Raven Media logo printed on a case, and I love it. It's great. Although the case came out a little pinkish because I did a fade to red.
Oh, did you post a picture of that up somewhere, or was that just?
I did. Yeah. It's in the Discord.
Okay.
I took a selfie. So yeah, it's been nice to just finally. This is the first time that I have really bought a new phone from AT&T since I got the 6S. I think it was the last new phone I got. The SE, the old SE I've been using, I literally found on the street. It was in a free pile.
Oh, right. That was the story I think you were telling me, but you were talking about how you needed a new phone. That's lucky. But that thing just stopped working?
Yeah, it just stopped working. I mean, it worked for, probably 6 months, almost 8 months.
Yeah.
And it was a great phone for that time.
That's really lucky.
But yeah, now I plug it in and I tried cleaning out the charging port and everything, and it's just nope. It refuses to believe that it's plugged into anything. So
yeah, well, happens eventually.
I gotta say, I've been playing some just stupid iPhone games on here, but it just runs so smooth, and the battery doesn't drop. Before, if you load up a game, on the old SE, I'd load up a game and the battery would drop 10% while it was loading. Just because it took so much processing power to load up some of these 3D rendering games and stuff. The phone. The software on it is really designed for a much newer phone, and I could feel it getting hot. Now it just runs. I can do augmented reality and all that kind of stuff, and it runs great, and it doesn't kill the battery at all. It's pretty fun.
Cool. Oh man, my phones don't usually last too long. This one's doing good though. I'll just knock on wood. But a year and a half on this one now. That's not so long. What would you say the longest you've ever had a phone for was?
The 6S that I got whenever I bought that thing has been, it's got the camera broke, so I keep trying to replace it, but every time my phone dies, I pull it out and use it for a couple of weeks. And so I honestly, that's my most longest running phone, but I'm so hard on phones. I go through a lot of them which is why I've purchased some cheap. But yeah, I gotta say that 6S really probably was my longest running phone. When did that come out? Because I think I bought it when it came out. And the only reason I stopped using it is because I broke the cover on the camera.
Oh, yeah.
But otherwise, it runs fine. So that came out 2015, so call it 5 years ago-ish. And I probably used it for 3 of those. So not super long. Like I said, I'm hard on phones.
That's a great run. Now that I'm thinking about it, I recall that I had a flip phone, one of my flip phones for like 3 or 4 years. The thing was a trooper. That was with the flip down analog keyboard.
Oh, Jesus.
One of those.
Yeah, I never had.
Yeah,
never had one of those.
In the aughts, as I've started calling them, I guess that's what we call them.
I remember getting the Razor. The Razor was freaking awesome. It was so small. Now it's a monstrosity. But I had one candy bar phone, and then I had the Razor, and then I had the first iPhone. Were my first 3 phones. And since then, I've been on just the iPhone cycle every 2 years for a while. And then the last, 5-ish years, I kind of stopped because, frankly, I didn't see anything I really liked. Yeah, and what it was is I didn't pay for it because so we were at Safeway, another long story, and Travis has a friend who plays Monopoly, which is when you check out, they give you the Monopoly tickets.
I never play.
Yeah. Never play. No one. It's the dumbest thing in the world, right? So his friend asked him to collect the tickets. So he's like, "Hey, can I get the tickets?" And the guy was like, "Sure. Here's a box." And we kind of looked at each other and was like, "Okay." So he literally gave us a box full of these lottery tickets. So we spent one night opening them up and just sorting through them, which was not fun and took forever.
Yeah.
And we won, and a few things we won a few things. Mostly it's one of those things where you need all 5 letters to win anything, and you get 4 of the letters a bunch of times, but the 5th letter just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So you can never win. But there was a couple of free things. We got a few free grocery items, a free stick of butter, that sort of thing. But I also got, through Shutterstock, I think is what it was, a free custom printed iPhone case.
Oh, cool.
And I was like, oh, well, so I just put the code in, and I got a reimbursement, and I had to pay shipping, but the case was free.
Sweet.
So it was like a $40 case,
Yeah.
get custom printed.
One of the clerks handed me a bunch of those tickets a few weeks ago, and I brought them home, and I was like, well, if I have a fistful, then... I started opening. I opened 4 of them, and I just kind of gave up. I was like, this is too complicated.
Right, it's really frustrating. Yeah. No, we had a whole production line where I was tearing them apart and opening them up and then splitting them, because there's 3 parts to it. We figured out there's the instant win stuff. There's the matching a bunch of stuff together, and then there's the go to the website and enter a number part. And each ticket has those 3 parts, so I'd open them up and separate them and then hand them to Travis, and he'd sort them. And then we were just watching Star Wars. I think we watched a bunch of
Nice. Me and Jules did a movie marathon. I haven't watched Clone Wars.
What are you guys watching these days?
Oh, right now, last night I found myself watching, Julia put on Peaky Blinders. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, totally. Never watched it, but
I was watching some of that.
Mm-hmm. That dude is so fucking creepy.
Oh, the main character in that show?
Yeah.
He does the dead behind the eyes thing really well. I'm gonna tack it up to him being a good actor.
Cillian Murphy? Wasn't he the Scarecrow in one of the Batmans? I think that ever since then. Yes.
Also beautiful. He should play a vampire.
Totally.
Creepy hot.
Cillian. Thank you. Cillian Murphy. That's very, very Irish, isn't it?
Oh, is he Irish in real life?
I mean, the name is. And Anna says yes, so.
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I don't even know what I've been up to. Other than sticking with my running schedule, that's great. Not smoking, generally trying to use this quarantine time to get something done so I don't feel like a complete tool when I'm done, when we're at the other end of this. At least I quit smoking.
That's a huge, if nothing else, and that's the only thing that comes out of this, that's great.
Yeah.
Honestly, so where I've been dumping most of my time is I got back into programming a little bit. So I downloaded Xcode, and I wanted to play Tetris. I love Tetris. And the game I played, the version I played, doesn't work on this new computer. It's just too old. It's not compatible. And I was like, well, fuck that. I'm going to recreate it on my own.
Yeah, how's that going?
I can. It's definitely playable on the phone. It's got bugs, so I can definitely crash it if I try. And there's a few issues, like if I delete multiple lines, the top blocks are supposed to drop. Sometimes they drop into each other, so I have to stop that. So there's definitely some bugs, but it's playable as a game, which is fun.
That's cool. Well, it's good to have something to keep you sane during this time. I've been, like I said, working on my next thing, spending a lot of time. Did I show you I bought new fencing equipment for whenever I'm allowed to do martial arts again? So I've been sitting here.
No, I want to see that.
And I cut all my hair off. So. Yeah, everything. Just totally shaved.
Hey, wow. Yeah, I haven't seen you. You've had a long beard for how many years now?
For more than 5 years, I think. These things are super cool. Most fencing clubs train with something like this now, which is it's basically just a big leather. The design on these things is pretty cool. I'm not going to put it all together right now, but it's open on the inside, but the outside is a lobster shell. So you can punch and you can get hit really hard. Which I think I almost broke my thumb once in my last club because we didn't train with gloves back. And I got a blunt. The sharps are too expensive.
And it's got the rolled tip. That's right.
But it's a blunt longsword. Yeah, they come with a rolled tip now, which is a new safety feature. Another new safety feature we didn't have back in the day. It was just like butter knife round. People got hurt sometimes, but And yeah, it's traditional German style longsword, so it's right under my armpit. It's about 4 feet.
That's cool.
Yeah, so that's exciting. I try to hit up my old coworker Pete, who you might remember working with at Grain and Gristle. He's not there anymore, but I know he fences. I was hoping to maybe there's no way the clubs are open yet. Martial arts isn't going to be a thing for a while. You can't not do contact. At least with fencing, you're just going to run into each other and stuff. I feel like I have an egg for a head because I'm no hair.
That is less of an issue. I've seen you bald before. It's the face. the chin. I'm like, wait, there's a chin there, and there's a whole thing going on from here down that I'm not used to.
I thought I didn't know if I was going to like it, but I was like, this is the time to do something like that. And time's going to be running short. It was weird for me too. It was weird to look in the mirror and be like, whoa, I have no chin. I'm used to my jaw being 4 inches longer. So much more.
I feel like you have two. Like I said, there's only 3 options in quarantine. You go bald, you go shaggy, or you get a really shitty haircut from somebody you know. Unless you happen to be dating a hairstylist.
I had Julia help me, and she was a bit nervous that I don't think she's ever shaved anyone's head before. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. Have you ever seen a Marine movie where people are getting inducted? You just grab them by the scruff and ring, 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 ring. Don't. It's like shearing a sheep. There's no grace.
I did
involved.
it myself. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's not hard. Did you just have clippers without a guard on it?
Yeah, I did actually use a guard. So, I don't even know what to call it because it doesn't show me the exact number, but it was one of the smallest lengths that I could choose. When I was doing my beard, and I hadn't cut it since before quarantine. I remember I was thinking about getting a haircut, and then quarantine happened, and it's been 2 months since then. And I just cut my hair.
You were
a
looking
couple
very
days ago.
shaggy. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. But I grabbed my beard, and I took the electric, and I just went across to cut. Luckily, it's a pretty new razor, so it's real sharp still, so you can do that. But yeah, you got to take it down, otherwise you can break the razor. Beard hair is not regular hair; it's wiry. When you were asking me before, I was like, man, I can't say I really did that much this week, but I've developed this habit of doing a lot of window shopping too. which is not great, but doing things to kill time. Oh, propagating a bunch of new plants. That's my indoor garden's turning into a thing.
Oh, that's really cool. A perfect time of year for it too.
That keeps me busy, and yeah, I'm trying to get the mini Virginia creeper I'm trying to make a bunch of them. I see people on like the Nextdoor app and stuff that are pretty prodigious gardeners that just have like a sale every couple of weeks where they just sell cuttings and little starts of things, and people go and buy them for a couple of bucks here and there. It's like that would be a cool little side thing for me. I'll probably never actually do it, but I do enjoy setting up the house and getting the lights all right and stuff. I spend a lot of time doing that and cooking.
Cooking is important, yeah.
A lot of cooking.
I have no problem filling my hours. I have a list of things to do that is twice as long as the time that I have, even with all the time in the day. And I'm getting up at like 8:30. I'm starting to do stuff at 9 a.m. I have to admit, I'm one of those people who's just like reveling in the quarantine. Like, it took me a little while, but
I don't hate it.
I'm getting paid better than I did when I was working with the unemployment. I'm so much more relaxed, not having to deal with people all the time. I'm loving making my own schedule. And when I go out, the city is quiet. That and reading, right? I've downloaded a bunch of audiobooks that I'm listening to. Right now, I'm going back, and I'm actually on a bit of a sci-fi kick. But right now I'm doing Revelation Space, which is a fantastic series that I read, 5 years ago, and I wanted to revisit it. Very sci-fi.
I think you told me about it.
I probably did. I remember I was going on about it back then. I've read The Expanse. I'm mixed on The Expanse. I again, because I think that the show's stuck in my head a little too much for The Expanse to really, I have a trouble separating them, and I want to. I made the mistake of watching the show first, and I need to give myself enough time to forget the show so I can go back and read the books without having the show in my head. So, Expanse is on my list, but I still have to wait until the show is sort of blah. I mean, Heinlein, Asimov, and Clarke I read ages ago. I love all that stuff.
Seth, what was that book with dragons in the title that you told me I had to read next?
Rage of Dragons.
Rage of Dragons, that's it.
Which actually, you were talking about the sword and fencing, and a big chunk of that book is describing, it's Bronze Age technology, so they have bronze swords, and they wrap them with leather to spar. And so they're talking about, like, the safety measures that don't work, and occasionally, like, when they really get enthusiastic, they can hit each other hard enough to actually kill each other, even though those swords are supposedly safe for training.
Yeah.
One of the innovations in the book is the main character trains with a wooden sword, which makes him so much faster because everyone else is training with these giant, heavy bronze swords, and they're used to like moving super slow and being super careful so they don't hurt each other. And so he gets like super fast because he's using a training with a lighter sword, and he can actually like hit his training partners and stuff like that. So there's a whole like chunk. I mean, basically the whole first half of the book is a training montage in sword fighting. You're gonna fucking love it.
Sounds like it. Well, I've got that, and I still haven't finished the new N.K. Jemisin book, so I'll finish that. That's plenty to read if I go camping for a couple of days.
Yeah, The City We Became it's a bit of an odd start, and then it becomes a roller coaster at the end. So you'll get to a certain point, and you won't want to put it down.
Nice. She seems to really enjoy dropping you right into something you don't understand.
Totally. No, she's good at that. But that, I think it makes even all that much better on the reread.
And, I mean, I've only read 4 of her books so far, and 3 of them were in a series.
And I've read a bunch of her other stuff. I think that as an author, she has, I don't even know how to say evolved, but like, she wrote really good characters in her early books, but her plot lines were a little cumbersome, and it took away from the books. And at some point, I feel like she just brought it all together and was like, all right, this is how I write a book, and she just nailed it. And she's been nailing it ever since.
I do feel like she's I can see a bit of a difference too, and an improved difference. I should clarify. And I also noticed in this book she seems more artful.
Mm-hmm.
Like she almost seems more. I don't even know how to describe this really. Like
she's found her voice even more so in this book.
Yeah.
Broken Earth was her exploring her voice, and this is celebrating her voice.
Maybe soul is the right way to say it. I feel like her writing has a soul. Whereas, you read a book sometimes and you're like, that was a good storyline. Like, that was a clever plot twist. Like, cool, yeah, good book. But you're not like, wow, this is alive, It's maybe not exciting in the way that her writing is.
I also feel like I could now read anything written by N.K. Jemisin and identify it instantly. Like, just the pace, the way she writes the way her word tonality and rhythm comes together, and her storytelling is just unique in a way that's a lot of authors have never mastered. And part of that may be because the audiobook is read by the same person, and she's amazing, and she may be adding some of that rhythm onto the words, but I think the words are written in a way that brings the rhythm into the story, and it makes it natural for the audiobook narrator to use that kind of rhythm in her speech.
Rhythm is another good word, and I'm just going to say it. This keeps popping into my head. I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else, but I feel like there's color, too.
Yeah.
Almost like her writing is more like a painting, but I don't even know if that makes sense or why I keep thinking that, but that's what's in my head. Go read N.K. Jemisin if you haven't yet.
The City We Became does such an amazing job of painting a picture of New York in a way that I don't think I've, no matter how much you've read about New York City, the way she paints this picture brings it alive and brings the boroughs together in a way that I want her to write a book about every city, because I feel like she would really capture, write the book about Portland coming alive, because that would be really interesting for me. And I feel like because you could do it for every city, and it would be like this super unique thing. It could be an incredible series.
The way she walks you in fifth season, that first third of the first book, it's very strange. I remember not understanding what was happening. At first, because the tenses are very strange, so at first it almost seems like the author, at first I thought that the narration, and I won't go too much further than this, that the narration was talking directly to the reader, that it was saying, you did this, you did that. It says that's how the narration starts off. And so I thought she was doing some weird thing at first where, you are the hero of the book that you're reading. Totally wrong. I was way off. But I remember in the first couple of chapters thinking, what is this? Why is she explaining to me what I did?
I'm nodding, yeah.
And then it starts clicking into place, like a 80s mech manga or something. Awesome.
Right.
With our powers combined.
Basically overhearing a story being told to somebody else.
Yeah.
And I think that's the difference, is you're overhearing a story being told rather than it being a story told to you. And that's where the second person sort of, once you realize that, it clicks into place and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. And you won't understand why the story is being told until the end of the book, the end of the series. And you're right, Fire Phoenix. Captain Planet is not a mech thing. Although it's very similar. A similar vibe.
He's a magic mech with instead of being inside his feet and hands.
What is he? Yeah.
Well, with your powers combined, he's a hero, that's who. He's been cleaning up this planet.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?